when you do high-intensity exercise, here's the difference between aerobic exercise and metabolic conditioning. Aerobic exercise, your first 10 minutes, you're actually burning what? You guys know what you're burning as an energy source? So you can burn three things. You can burn sugars, protein, or fat, right? Your body rarely ever wants to burn protein because that's your what? Organs and muscles. So it really does two things, either fat or sugar. So aerobic exercise, first 10 minutes, the only thing that you're burning is what? Sugar. Then you convert into what's called a Krebs cycle, and you start going into fat metabolism. So let's say your workout is 20 minutes. You did 10 minutes of what? Fat metabolism. Once you're done with aerobic exercise, as soon as you get down to resting heart rate, you switch back over to what? Sugar metabolism. So you only got in your workout 10 minutes of fat burning. That's it. When you do metabolic conditioning, it's all sugar metabolism, meaning you're metabolizing your blood sugar first, and then once that blood sugar starts to go down, the body then starts to pull glycogen. You know what glycogen is? It's stored sugar. You store sugar in the form of glycogen in your muscles and liver. So once you burn through your blood sugar, then the body starts to take glycogen and convert it back into glucose in order to raise your blood sugar up again. When you're doing 12 minutes of exercise, your only fuel source is sugar. That's it. You mean I'm supposed to burn sugar? I thought I was supposed to burn fat. Well, when you're done with that workout, what happens is, what does the body have to do then in order to replace all the glycogen that you burned out?
It's got to pull from the fat.
Then it's got to pull fat from it and then turn it into glycogen. And so it's got to actually burn that fat and convert that fat into an energy source and convert it into glycogen. And guess how long you do that for? 36 to 48 hours afterwards. So now instead of burning fat for 10 minutes, you just are burning fat for 36 to 46 hours afterwards. Does that make sense? So the higher intensity that you exercise, the more fat burning you're going to have, and also the proportional amount of intensity will equal the proportional amount of human growth hormone release. So the higher intensity you go, the more human growth hormone gets released. That's going to do what? Help you build muscle. Now, so here's, if you don't believe me, here is the research now. So what they found is fat loss with high-intensity exercise. So they took rats, had them run on a treadmill. They found that rats lost more fat when they exercised at a high intensity compared to rats that exercised at a low intensity. Now listen, despite both groups performing an equivalent amount of work. Now I used to think if you walk a mile or if you sprint a mile, it's no different. But now we're finding, yes it is. So if you sprint a mile or if you walk a mile, which one will burn more fat? The sprinting will. So that's what they're saying. So even though, let's say you go out and you want to do 10 push-ups, 10 squats, 10 sit-ups, and you do that 10 times, let's say, and it takes you an hour to do it, versus if it takes you 5 minutes to do it, which one will burn more fat? Yeah, so the more that you condense it down and the more intense that you do it at. Now losing fat with metabolic conditioning. There is a greater amount of fat loss after higher intensity exercise due to the release of what? Human growth hormone. Do you understand that men are paying thousands of dollars to get this injected into them? Because they inject the human growth, or actually baseball players are doing this, or used to do this too. What would happen when they would inject themselves with human growth hormone? They would lose fat and build muscle. It's like human growth hormone, people are paying thousands of dollars to take this illegally. Well, you can get it in 12 minutes of exercise. They also found there's a positive relationship between carbohydrate or sugar expenditure during exercise and fat expenditure during recovery. So what does that mean? The more sugar you burn during your max T3 fit or your metabolic conditioning, the more fat you're going to lose afterwards, and the more muscle you're going to be building. Everybody wonder why you can't lose weight? So if people can't lose weight, I tell them the first and foremost thing I say is, show me your diet, you're eating too much sugar, right? I'm not eating any sugar. I'm like, well, I'm not eating just cane sugar. I'm also talking about anything that turns to sugar, which is white bread, or actually wheat bread too, too much fruit, too much pasta. Whether you believe it or not, that is all sugar inside the body. But number two, I tell people, you're not exercising at a high enough intensity. So here's what they found. there was a significant loss in body fat in a group that exercised at a high intensity, 80 to 90% of, you know what that means? Maximal heart rate. No significant change in body fat was found in the lower intensity group, which exercised at 60 to 70%. So you go to your doctor and you say, I want to lose weight, what do I need to do? You need to go on a treadmill for 30 minutes at 60 to 70%, and then you get mad at your doctor because it doesn't work. So they found that when you're exercising at 60 to 70%, so basically what that feels like is you're about like this. And you still can carry on a conversation. So if you can carry a conversation when you're doing a Max T3 Fit, you're not doing it hard enough. Even though no significant difference in workload existed. So again, they're doing the same amount of work. One's doing it in a shorter amount of time, and the other's doing it in a longer amount of time, but one's doing it high intense, the other one's doing it at a low intensity. Now, how many people know what metabolic syndrome is, right? This is like the new disease. Metabolic syndrome is actually pre-diabetes. So here's what they found with metabolic syndrome. And in fact, I would say, as far as people who are coming into our office, I would say that easily half of them have metabolic syndrome. So metabolic syndrome is they have high triglycerides. They may not have high blood pressure yet, but they're 20 to 30 pounds overweight. And if you would check their insulin levels, not their blood sugar levels, because your body compensates for that. If your insulin levels are high, you're pre-diabetic. So when you check those, I would say half the people that walk in already have metabolic syndrome. So what they found is that high-intensity exercise reverses most of the risk factors associated with metabolic syndrome. So what that means is overweight, high triglycerides, high blood pressure, high cholesterol. Those are all some of the risk factors for metabolic syndrome, and also for type 2 diabetes. So they actually took a group of people, they divided them into two. These people had metabolic syndrome on their way to type 2 diabetes. They put them through a 16 weeks of exercise program. And those that actually had metabolic syndrome, did high-intensity exercise, half of them completely reversed it. Isn't that amazing? What's also amazing is that they did what? They did not change their diet one bit. Now, when you start changing your diet, you go on the advanced nutrition plan, and you start doing high-intensity exercise. Well, we have some people here that the doctor can't even keep up with lowering your medication, right? She cannot, the doctor can't keep up with lowering the medication because it's dropping so quickly. So they have to keep lowering the medication more and more because her body is becoming what? Resensitized to the insulin. So if you have type 2 diabetes, you don't hear insulin anymore. The doctor keeps giving you medications to drive up insulin more and more and more. And insulin is actually what damages the body. You cannot tolerate high amounts of insulin because insulin damages neurology, damages the blood vessel linings. It does all kinds of damage inside of the body. You don't want a lot of insulin inside the body. Yet those people that were doing high-intensity exercise without changing their diets whatsoever, half of them reversed their metabolic syndrome. And then they did with people who did moderate exercise, they didn't hardly see any changes whatsoever. So how many people know someone with metabolic syndrome or type 2 diabetes? Why were they not here, right? They need to be here to know that there is hope, that they don't have to be in bondage of more drugs, more medication, that there's an easy way to fix this as long as you just stop interfering. So high-intensity exercise and what nutrition plan? Advanced nutrition plan. And that stuff works like crazy.